Hey, how you doing, YouTube? Welcome back, and if you're new here, why? Well, of course, welcome. Let's see. Today, this is a RSVP Pentel. I've used them before. You guys have seen them before. Just a regular ballpoint pen, and I enjoy them. I enjoy the fine point. I just on this one, you'll see I break down and use a pencil there to try and give myself a horizon line, and just a little something, and I kind of make the drawing with the pen a little bit light at first, so I can, tentatively go about it and see what I'm doing here. This is a little L house. I call them an L house. I don't know what they really are. And on that left side there, it's slanting up. I kind of straighten that out with a cactus that I put there. You don't notice that line's so crooked. In any case, yeah, these little L houses pop up around New Mexico, and they've been here for centuries. They've been around a long time. I think the Indians first started using adobe block to build, which the majority of these little L houses were built out of adobe block. I think the Indians first started using adobe block around in the 1400s. It's pretty funny. I was looking on YouTube there, and just looking at Adobe Block and how to build it and what, things like that. But the funny part was I came across a news, it was like an interview kind of thing for the TV news. And it was talking about a guy named Quentin Wilson. He's a Northern New Mexico College professor. I don't know how old the video was. Anyway, the guy seemed to know what he was talking about, but the interview, the lady that was narrating the thing, she really got me. She says New Mexico's a high-tech center and becoming a high-tech center in Albuquerque, but when you come here, you will see adobe everywhere, and she didn't sound very knowledgeable. I'm telling you, there's not much adobe here left. They still build with adobe, and a lot of people that build newer homes are building with it, because although it doesn't have a great insulative value, it has a massive energy storage value. It has a big lag time between the outside and the inside because the walls are thick and they store. So if it's in the wintertime and you have a southern adobe exposure, it's storing that heat that the sun is hitting until the evening when you need it. That heat starts to radiate into the house. Anyway, she made it sound like there were adobe houses all over the place, and that anybody that came here should expect to see that. But I'm going to tell you, Albuquerque's just as gentrified as anywhere else. Most of the houses look like they came from the east. The only difference is there are a lot of subdivisions that have stucco on the outside, but they're still framed houses. They're not made with dirt blocks. Adobe is made basically out of mud and straw. So if you come to Albuquerque or you come to New Mexico, you can hunt and find lovely examples of old adobe homes. And certainly in Santa Fe and Taos, there are quite a few in numbers, and in rural towns, which are dying like they are all across the country, I think. But don't expect adobe to be prolific. How's that? So yeah, I call these little L houses because of the design. They just are they head in one direction for a room and a half, and in another direction for a room and a half. Typically on one side is a living room, and then as you get toward the corner of the house, there is a bathroom, kitchen type thing, and then a bedroom. Of course, there are large homes that have used the L design, but these little bitty ones, I only know of a few of them here in the Albuquerque, Las Lunas, Belen area. But I've always had a crush on their cute little houses. And most of them, this one's on 47. And I don't know for sure that it's made out of adobe. Of course, I have to be careful. I made a video a while back of a barber shop on Mountain Road. And I said that that was probably adobe, which when I went and talked to the owner after I had made the video, come to find out it's made of cinder block. It was made about 20 years later than I thought. In any case, they're a cute little, fun little project. Quick little drawing for you. If you're just starting out, you know, this is something you can play with. I thought today, I'm not going to do a big history lesson on Adobe or anything. This one, this little house is on Highway 47 in Las Lunas. If you ever get around that area, you could probably find it. And if you have a pencil, or if you're at all interested, if you're a beginning artist, I tend to dip in everything in my palette, but my palette for watercolor stays kind of simple. I still use some store-bought greens for those trees, but a lot of times I throw in some blues and, like you saw there, a little yellow into it. And I like to mix my colors on the tree or on the wall as opposed to in the palette. So I thought I'd list off. I'm going to show my palette, but it goes by pretty quickly. So I'm going to read you what I use, and then you'll see the little palette that I'm currently using, which I've mentioned before that I switch out palettes. I usually use one for 3 or 4 days and then switch to another one to avoid getting mold. Because once I start using one, I like to keep it wet because some of the paints granulate. Like ultramarine will turn very grainy, and yellow ochre gets grainy. So if you let them dry out too much. So I like to have them soak for a while before I start using them, and I let them soak for a day or two, because that way you try to get rid of the graininess. In any case, in the greens, I always have olive green with me, and sometimes I use azo green, and of course that's a good base to start from. I do keep cad yellow and lemon yellow in the palette. There's yellow ochre, burnt sienna, raw umber, and I use two things that are not really, they're kind of like extras. You don't really need them because you can use the complement of the color, but for a browner, warmer dark, a lot of times I'll just dip into sepia, and for a cooler one, I'll use a little Payne's gray. That the roof there and the gravel drive, I think, have a lot of Payne's gray in them. Also, there's ultramarine, deep, and cobalt hue, and I use cerulean. Those are standards in the palette. What's not standard in the palette is occasionally you'll see me using something, a teal of some kind, a bright blue. And typically I don't use it straight out of the box, although you could do some really fun stuff if you did, or straight out of the tube. But most of the time I mix it in with other things. So, and then that a limited palette, because obviously if you want to, you can work with your blues, and it takes a little practice. I'm going to tell you, you can't just use any blue and any yellow to make green. You know, you need to practice with them a little bit. But a lot of people make their own greens. I just like it because in New Mexico there's so much of the olive azo green type, you know, junipers and pine trees and things like that. So it's an easy base for me to start from. When I'm doing oil paintings, I work pretty much from a real limited palette, you know, cad red, cad yellow, a couple of yellows, cad red, or cad yellow deep and cad yellow light, and ultramarine blue. You know, occasionally I'll put another color in there. I may even have an olive green in oil, just to, like I say, for that same reason. But in watercolor, I feel more comfortable using a few more of these colors, a few more pigments. So anyway, on this one, yeah, I put a little shadow in here, and what makes me, let me go to this, what makes me think that this one is an adobe, if you see the white, if you look in the windows, to one side or the other of the window, inside the window, you see I left it white. I'm just now covering up the windows where that white vertical line is. If you look in a house as you're going by, those typically, the adobe blocks are much thicker than regular standard building materials, and that area will look very thick. You can see it in the windows and in the doors and things like that. And that's what makes me think this one's probably an adobe. And I would have gone up and talked to the folks, but as you will see in the photograph, there were a few dogs there that were really not very happy about me standing in the middle of the street taking these pictures. They were not interested in anything that I had to say, do, or offer, other than apparently my blood, it looked like. I should have videoed, because they really were upset that I was there. So anyway, those two little things, I don't think I painted them. On top of that concrete embutment there, or the concrete thing that goes along, there's the palette. You can stop it and go with those colors that I have there. There's also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but there's burnt sienna, burnt umber, and I believe raw umber in the palette at this time. Those also make it pretty easy. So, oh yeah, on top of those, there's some little white things. You can see I left them white there just for interest, but they're antique, like milk jugs. Kind of cool, big metal, you know, that I think they used to store milk in with. And I forgot to put a shadow on the actual mailbox itself. I did go back in after I turned the video off and put a shadow on the mailbox to kind of make it show up a little bit better. I threw the mailbox in there because if you look, it has two legs. I don't know what I was thinking, but when I drew the first leg for the mailbox, I drew the mailbox, the head of the mailbox, with the door right on the leg. So I just went ahead and put in another leg. Well, listen, this one went by fast. As usual. Man, they're fun to do. I hope if you're just starting out, you really will give them a try. You know what I mean? If you're drawing at all, or sketching at all, or traveling at all, if you're traveling, which I hope to start traveling in the future. And that was my idea for this channel, was to travel and sketch things that I saw. But anyway, yeah, get out and do something today. There's the little house. Have a great time. Glad to see you, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.